I didn't know gin and tonic makes you orgasm.
Sometimes double.
Anyway,
Yeah, we're going to talk about something that you visited today.
yes.
Yeah. What is
Why
it?
don't you ask me what I visited?
Oh, Alex. Hi.
Yes. Oh,
What?
hi.
Where did you go today? What did you visit, Alex?
Today I went to the United States Holocaust Museum
In Washington D.C.
in Washington. Well, it wasn't in Munich, Germany.
Where is it located? Is it near the Smithsonian?
Yeah, it's near the Smithsonian area. It's very nice. Actually, right after I went on a walk for the very first time to the Jefferson Memorial.
I love that place. I
Oh,
love that.
I
You
know
know
why.
why? It's a round building. I love round buildings.
More on Jefferson Building and the George Mason built Memorial, which I also went to. More on both
I've
later.
never seen that. I've never seen the George Mason building.
It more on both later. You would
Okay.
love it. Anyway.
I take you at your word. I love it.
So I went to the Holocaust Museum because I figured, well, it's something I should see. It's something, you
Mhm.
know, I okay. The big reason why I wanted to go is I recently read a report. I think it was a Time magazine poll.
Yeah.
1/3 of millennials don't know what the Holocaust is.
What? What? That's not possible.
That's
That's
I mean, on one hand, it's a poll, and you just can't take whatever it is as gospel news. But even if this is it's it's really hard for me to ignore that. I mean, people are really stupid. My hope and prayer is that they were rushing through this stupid survey and they misread Holocaust and were thinking of holofart or some weird word or
Alex.
concoction.
What do you expect when the chair of the history department at Santa Bumpkin Silly College teaches rape as history? That's all she teaches.
That's
Rape.
every college. That's every college.
Yeah, rape.
In any event, I
I'm not
wanted to go.
surprised that that's that though. I don't.
You were a little bit at first.
No,
Anyway,
I 1/3 is pretty high. That's
it
pretty high.
really is sickeningly high,
Uh,
and
Go
that
ahead.
with anti-Semitism going around, even in our own Congress.
Mm-hmm.
This is something where I should learn. That's the purpose of museums, right? Is to learn. So that's
Exactly.
what
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to do. I'm
Okay.
going to go to the Holocaust Museum and learn. So, and I did learn. I learned a lot of things I didn't know. For example, I had no idea the whole pink triangle phenomenon. They'd give Jews stars and they give homosexuals pink triangles. I didn't know that. Now I do. I also didn't know that they hunted after and persecuted uh, uh, Jehovah's Witnesses. I
Yes.
I thought that was interesting.
Gypsies, Catholics,
Well,
homosexuals.
not
Uh,
necessarily Catholics.
oh yeah, Catholics. Oh, very definitely
Well,
do it.
well, real Catholics, yes, but
Well, yeah, real Catholics.
institutional. I mean,
Not not weekend Catholics.
right, exactly, exactly.
Nominal Catholics, we used to call them.
Most Protestant.
Did you discover that
Yeah,
um, was there a section in the museum where the Jewish prisoners could escape from being murdered if they became wardens and supervised the death of their family and friends and fellow Jews.
I didn't come across that. I mean,
Really?
I will say this though. There's a lot of information, and at first I was reading every plaque and every this and every that, and it can get a little tedious if you do that kind of a museum
Yeah,
crawl.
yeah,
Plus,
yeah.
I wanted time to visit the Jefferson Memorial, so
Right.
I knew I vaguely knew about the ghettos, but now I feel as though I have a much more
Hmm.
substantial knowledge. And of
Hmm.
course, the more you learn about anything, the more you realize how little you know. So
Hmm.
actually, so the overall though, I'll just stick with the basic points. It was an enlightening experience.
Hmm.
It was um, it was obviously very sobering that
Heartbreaking. I mean,
this is
so,
what
so
human beings are capable of doing. And that was a
yeah.
major theme throughout the whole museum. Have
Oh,
you been to it, by the way?
no, but I've been to I've been to the center near the Getty uh, that
Mm.
Charlton Heston took me to the Scheinfeld Center, and they have an elaborate museum there in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
and There's one photograph of just a portion of 6 million pairs of shoes.
Yes,
Shoe,
they did have
shoe.
this one room. You walk in and there's this pile of shoes. When you hear 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust,
Yeah.
it's a number. But when you can see, I
Hmm.
mean, it was probably like 2,000 shoes. When you see 2,000 shoes,
And
that's
that's only
one.
2,000.
Yeah, that's 1,000 people. You know,
Right,
you're
right.
you're like, this is insane. This
Yeah.
is insanity. That was a
Mhm.
theme throughout the whole exhibit. Is like Germans were fairly civil people. They were, they weren't crazy, nut
No,
jobs.
and they were, and the Jewish Germans, the German Jews were very patriotic. They
Yeah,
had fought in World War One with
yeah,
distinction, and they
yeah,
couldn't believe that Hitler really wanted to carry out the extermination of their people. They couldn't believe it. They
yeah,
thought of themselves first as Germans and only secondly as Jews. Many of
yeah.
them, not
Oh,
all of
oh,
them.
oh, you no, well, I mean, you're really right about that. Is that this that they really did emphasize the power
Mhm.
of propaganda.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, Hitler only got, I believe, a third of the vote. He democratically won.
Hmm.
There's another problem I have with democracy is,
Hmm.
look, tyrants can win.
Yeah.
It gives them, especially if they're smart. Hitler was one of the first politicians to, in the runoff election, he actually got a plane, rented a plane, commissioned a plane, and would fly to like 21 rallies in a day. And so while his opponent made one radio speech,
Hmm.
Hitler personally visited 21 different cities.
Yeah, he had it wired.
Oh
He
my
had
word.
he had it wired. Yeah.
Real, I mean, as far as politicians go, he takes the cake, which doesn't speak very well of politicians.
No, but back to your experience at
Back to my experience.
the Holocaust Museum in Washington D.C.
Overall, um, I thought it was a good exhibit. But I have major complaints.
Good. What other?
Number one, it was pretty sterile. Meaning,
You mean it wasn't very emotionally impactful?
no, no, no.
Oh,
I
really?
mean, I
I'm
would say
surprised
that
at that. It didn't exist when I was in Washington, so I don't know.
right, right. I would say that I mean, if you've seen the movies, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, Schindler's List,
Schindler's
that
List.
that has the emotional gut punch.
Yeah.
This was an emotional. I mean, probably the most emotional room was the shoes, the room with all the shoes.
Everybody says that. It's amazing.
Well, it's
Everybody
because
says
they're
that.
even the shoes look pathetic and worn out. They're
Yeah.
dirty.
Yeah.
I mean, by today's standards, you would look at that and go, "What kind of rag is this?" You wouldn't think they're shoes.
Right.
But to see this pile in front of you, this disorganized, I mean, and I kind of was used, or I think the first time I went to a presentation on the Armenian genocide,
Yes.
I
We
was
want to
like,
talk about that too.
well,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah.
I really can tell if someone knows what they're talking about when they talk about the Holocaust, or
Right.
if they are smart enough to mention the Armenian genocide, because it shows that they've done research into the history of genocides and that the Holocaust wasn't just a one-off thing. In fact, they even had Hitler's notorious quote. Armenians quote this all the time. They remember the truncated version, but they had the full quote, which came out of nowhere.
Mhm.
I'm sad that they didn't have the full context of the quote, but I personally know the context. It's Hitler addressing a lot of the leadership and the troops right before they
Mhm.
invade Poland. This is before the first act
Mhm.
of violence against
Mhm.
goyams, or non-Jewish people.
Goy. Goy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
takes place, and I mean the leadership is aware about the final solution. About,
Mhm.
they're going to go there and kill Jews and wipe out as many Jews as they can find. They're aware of this. And what Hitler does to calm them is, well, first of all, he threatens to kill anyone who disobeys him. And he also basically consoles them with this notorious quote, "Who today remembers the Armenians?" You know,
Wow. I had never heard that.
yes,
I
it's a
have never heard that. He
Hitler
said
said that.
that? He
Hitler
actually,
said that, yeah.
and
You
this
could
is before the invasion of Poland?
decide 20
Wow.
years after.
Wow.
Now it's like a little over 100 years since the Armenian genocide, and
Yeah.
because of the internet and stuff like that, we're much more aware of that. But
Mhm.
20 years after, it wasn't talked about.
Mhm.
But that is essentially what Hitler was able to, the lie he was able to sell to his leadership that, yeah, we'll get away with it. I mean, the Ottomans got away with it. They're still
Yeah.
getting away with it.
Well, they had planned on a 1,000-year Third Reich.
Mhm.
The first two didn't last that long, nearly. The first two were
Yeah.
pretty much a bust, but they had
There's a
planned on
charm,
it.
you know?
Yeah, there's the charm. So they thought they could outlive their dastardly, criminal, maniac, monstrous,
Well, I mean,
murderous
it's a
ruler.
lot like a lot of pro-choice or pro-abortion
Yeah.
folks. They just wrap it up in nuances. Like they're pretty much the biggest perpetrators of race out
Mm.
there. I mean,
Yeah.
race was sort of this ethereal idea, but they really locked down on it. Yes, there are totally races. This is the bad race. We are the good race. We're the
Well,
best
they
race
they
out
succeeded in convincing the Jewish, I'm sorry, the German population that people of the quote Jewish race, which of course is nonsense, as you and I have discussed on the previous episode on racism, but they had convinced the German people that uh, the Jews were a subhuman category.
right. That
They
they
were
were the
not fully
lowest.
human. So in fact, there's a famous movie by Leventhal, the famous director who did the Nuremberg film, which was a
Mm.
tremendous propaganda film. Everybody studies it who studies propaganda film. And she opens the movie with
Mm.
rats running around in sewers and under streets, things like that. And
Right.
then the voiceover at the bottom, you see it at the bottom of the film. The the Jews are vermin and they must be exterminated like rats. And she actually convinced sophisticated Hegel, Schopenhauer,
I
uh,
mean,
Jews and Germans especially that the Jews were not a human being. That's amazing.
well, what's really weird is, I mean, maybe you could get away with it, I guess, if the Jews were. I mean, I'm trying to. I'm doing my best to see this through the Nazis' perspective. Maybe you could get away with it if they were ridiculously unsuccessful, like they were just not cutting it. They really were.
They were
But
incompetent, you mean?
yeah, but they were totally competent. They were not
They're the
just
most
great.
successful group of people in the German Empire. They were
I
the
mean,
successful bankers and artists and
and
violinists and
doctors and
pianists and doctors
philosophers
and
and all
lawyers
that
and
stuff.
philosophers.
And
You name it.
it, the
They were
greatest irony
successful
of
people.
this is
Right.
Hitler did intense persecution against communists,
Yeah,
and a lot of I mean, okay, and now I'm getting into the criticism of the museum. I was really ticked off.
yeah.
They had to show the communists as the crazy left wings and the Nazis as the conservatives, as the right wings,
Oh,
because
really?
oh
Oh,
yeah.
no kidding.
Oh, I mean, I'm
Uh-huh.
getting kind of used to it, which is sickening because
Yeah,
what's stupid is both sides were
yeah.
not conserving the individual, which is what modern conservatism
You
is
must have
always
found
about.
yourself back in the classroom at Santa Barbara City
Oh,
College
I mean,
political
okay,
science class
okay.
with
It was
your
okay.
favorite
It was
professor.
no.
Yeah.
It was way more nuanced. At least, I mean, it's really because I'm in DC and I've made a point to
Uh,
study this that I've become more aware. So, maybe the average passerby just didn't notice.
yeah.
And I really do think it's kind of sick that the media has kind of uh, characterized Nazis as right wing and communists as left wing. That's not fair representations at all.
Oh,
Conservative right wing people are all about conserving individuality,
oh,
whereas communists are about preserving the whole, uh, uh, community, the
mm,
socialism society. They're
right,
collectivists. The only difference is that Nazis are like, well, yes, but we'll preserve the collective of just white people.
right.
They're pretty much communists except for white people.
Mhm.
And you look at Hitler's policies, his gun control. There was also very little discussion of his actual political policies and how he implemented them. Very little. There was virtually no discussion on domestic policy, how he was big on state-provided childcare, state-provided education, state or gun control laws, major gun control, wealth redistribution, abortion, all that stuff. But this is the fascinating thing, is that on the section on book burning, they talked about how they
Thomas
talked about how they
Mann,
would burn these students that were not necessarily state sponsored, but state encouraged and state approved. Goebbels would, cheer them on and give them the thumbs up for burning books. And what was fascinating is they made the point to say most of the authors they were burning were not Jewish authors.
No.
They would burn Sigmund Freud and Marx.
Thomas Mann.
Even though they both, what's ironic is they really, the Nazi ideology is so similar to Sigmund Freud and Marx, their ideologies. They would also burn Helen Keller, Margaret Sanger, which I thought was fascinating because there's this quote I just can't find. I've never been able to see if it's valid or not. But Hitler was you can see the charts. He believed if your grandfather was Jewish, but everyone else was Aryan, you're okay. Versus there's this one quote out there where Margaret Sanger effectively said that if there's one drop of N-word blood in someone, that makes them, worthless or whatever. In effectively stating that Margaret Sanger was a bit more of a radical eugenicist than Hitler was. So, but my biggest complaint of the whole museum is they were completely unfair in pushing the narrative that all anti-Semitism comes from from Christians and from Christian thought. They didn't even mention Muslim anti-Semitism, which is ridiculously more prominent at virtually any point in time. Muslim anti-Semitism rather than Christian anti-Semitism. How they started out the narrative as saying, well, this is who the Jewish people are, and then Christianity came out of Judaism. Jesus was a Jew, his disciples were Jewish, and then the medieval times came, and they just decided that, well, Jews are successful, so we're just going to blame all of evils on the Jews because they killed Jesus. And I'm kind of sitting here going, well, that's not what the Gospels say, the Gospels were written by, 2 out of the 4 guys were Jewish, for one.
Right.
I mean, hello. And then they talk about the Crusades. In 1095 AD, some white male Christians marched out of Europe, and the only time the Muslims are mentioned is in saying that the Christians marched out to go out and kill some Muslims. So that they killed more Jews in the process. Not only is that a completely unfair representation of the Crusades, but it's also a completely unfair, bypassing of the insanity of the Muslim discrimination against Jews.
Yeah, it's historically incomplete. Let me ask you this: was there any mention in the museum about the influence of Richard Wagner and Martin Heidegger? Heidegger being a German philosopher who was considered to be pro-Nazi, and certainly Richard Wagner, the famous composer of many operas, and
there really wasn't much discussion.
So there's nothing about the cultural influences on Nazism.
There was a little bit on the Elders of Zion. They talked about that. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, of course.
The Sayings of the Wise Men of Zion was written by Dietrich Eckart. I think I told you about that.
Yeah, you tell me everything.
Yeah. And he was the guy who said, Hitler will dance, but I wrote the music. He was the one who secreted that book, Sayings of the Wise Men of Zion, throughout Europe, which gave rise to, especially in France, by the way, which we have reverberated today, the anti-Semitism of Europe was largely propelled by 3 cultural forces: Martin Heidegger, the philosopher, German philosopher; Richard Wagner, the German composer; and Dietrich Eckart, the mastermind of Aryan mythology.
What's ironic is that you get this anti-Jew philosophy But then
Yeah.
you mix it with the Jewish philosophy. Well, it's not directly Jewish, but it was made by a Jew, Marx, and you put them together and you get Nazism. It's really when you consider that, it's extremely bizarre
Well,
that you.
Marx was ethnically Jewish, but he was not a practicing
Oh,
Jew.
sure, yeah. I mean, if he was a practicing Jew, he would not. I mean, he would have burned his all his theories to the ground, you know.
Yeah.
But
He
my
was
overall,
ethnic Jewish, though.
yeah, he was ethnically
He would
Jewish.
have been killed under the Nazi
Yes.
regime, which is kind of funny.
Right, right. And I'm going to tie my whole summary into one little bow is that it's a
Mhm.
great place to learn, but if you think that going through the museum once is enough, you are dead wrong.
Yeah.
This is something that should be reflected upon for your entire life.
Well, when I visit you in Washington, hopefully in the spring, I think we should go there again. And I have not seen it, so I would really like to see it.
I love the bonus thing that I didn't realize I would see. All the volunteers and the docents were just so Jewish. Oh my word! I mean, you got
Really?
these. Oh, you got the. I mean, they're just
Did you
like
talk to any of them? Did you speak to any of them?
I probably. I mean, yeah, quite a few. There's this one resource center they have. A nice conversation with the guy at the desk, and and they have this whole resource center dedicated to reuniting families separated
Right,
during
right,
the Holocaust,
right.
which is great. And they apparently they used to have something like that for Armenia. By the way, as a side note, as, by the way, as a side note for my experience, um,
About the Armenians.
well, yeah, I am pretty biased in saying this, but the Armenian genocide museum in Armenia was much more tasteful, uh, and I would say a little bit more educational. It was a little bit. It was much smaller.
Mhm.
But it was definitely more personally, I would say better put together all around.
You know,
You
you
know,
posted today something about the Egyptian president referencing the Armenian genocide, and you highlighted this on your post as being some dramatic breakthrough. Could you explain that a little bit more to me today?
yeah, I can do a little bit. The
I know we're running out
Muslim,
of time, but
I know, but the Muslim world, there, I mean, it's kind of like how the Aryan underground they all deny the Holocaust, whether they be in
right,
Europe or South
right.
America, North America.
Yes.
It's same thing in the um, Muslim-dominated world.
Mhm.
So for a country like Egypt, which has that as much power as they do, to reference the Ottoman Empire's genocide of the Armenians is a big deal because Turkey still denies this. I'm not sure many I don't think any Middle Eastern country um, is open about it because in one way or another they're aligned. I mean, obviously Saudi Arabia
Oh,
and
the Arab
Iran are.
League. Yeah, the Arab League is very.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously rivalries and whatnot, but for a country to admit that, because, and granted, Turkey's not universally popular, but nevertheless, it's a big deal for a country's president
Mhm.
to admit something
Is this the
like
first
that.
time that an Egyptian president has acknowledged in public the Armenian
Probably
genocide?
Egyptian president, probably, yeah,
Yeah,
I would say
yeah.
so. I mean, Turkey will not happen for a long time, if ever.
If ever,
I
yeah.
probably never will. They'd probably rather shoot themselves than admit it. Because they've lasted this long, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think that you're visiting the museum, the Holocaust Museum, probably sheds new light on the fact that we have members of Congress now who are Muslim, Holocaust deniers, and they
Well,
hate
okay,
Israel.
whoa. We don't, uh, not necessarily Holocaust deniers. That's about as extreme, um, like as in terms of rhetoric you can get before you cross the bridge over to physically violent against Jews. I mean, denying the Holocaust. I don't think any representative denies the Holocaust.
Oh,
They
you haven't.
definitely
You
they
better do
definitely
your
hate
research.
Israel.
You better do your research.
You're referring
Look up
to Omar.
Omar. Look up Omar.
I've
Yeah.
looked up. I Does she skirt around? Are you saying
she is a Holocaust denier, and she is a hater of Israel. She wants the destruction of
I want some sources here, man.
Fine, do your research. I'm not going to do your research for you.
Well, you're
what
also
the hell?
but you are going to make a claim and then not back it
Yeah,
up.
that's right. And you're going to
You
come
sound
back
like
and tell me I was right.
You sound like CNN.
You're going to come back and tell me I was right.
I got better things to do than fact check you. I'd be busy all day.
You have better things to do than to learn the truth. I see.
Oh my goodness, you. Thank you so much for listening, guys. If there's any area or exhibit in DC you want me to visit next, please let me know.
And we're on iTunes. Don't forget, we're on iTunes.
Yeah, subscribe and throw money in our general direction.
That's right. Right. Bye.
Again, with the bye thing.
Hi, folks. Mark McIntyre here, letting you know that we're now on iTunes, so you can download all of the episodes and confuse all of your friends. Bye-bye.